Most poor growth isn't caused by bad plants or bad genetics. It's really caused by gardeners stacking inputs on top of broken soil and just, hoping time fixes it. Fertilizer, compost, teas, amendments, none of it works the way it should when the soil profile itself is missing one critical layer. I've seen beds that were fed for years still produce weak crops because that layer was never rebuilt. Once it is, growth changes fast, and the need for constant inputs drops almost immediately. The mistake starts when soil is treated like a container instead of a system. Most gardeners build soil vertically in theory, but manage it horizontally in practice. They top-dress compost, mulch the surface, and disturb the root zone every season. What gets ignored is the transition layer between organic matter and mineral soil. That layer is where biology actually lives, where roots linger and where water and nutrients are buffered instead of lost. When it's missing, roots either stay shallow and stressed or dive too fast into compacted ground with no microbial support. In raised beds, this shows up as great growth the first year, followed by decline. In-ground gardens show uneven moisture, nutrient lockout, and disease pressure that doesn't respond to feeding. In hydroponics, it shows up as roots that look fed but never quite resilient. The layer that fixes this is not fertilizer, and it's not more compost. The layer almost no one builds on purpose is a biologically active transition layer made from coarse, carbon-rich material partially broken down and lightly inoculated with living microbes. Not finished compost, not raw mulch, something in between. This layer acts like a buffer zone that roots can grow through slowly while microbes do the work of converting nutrients on demand. In my own beds, this layer sits directly under the surface mulch and above the denser soil below. When I started adding it intentionally, root depth increased, watering frequency dropped, and plants stopped showing mid-season stress, even in heat. Why finished compost alone doesn't solve long-term growth problems. Finished compost is stable, which is great, but it's also mostly done. It feeds the soil briefly, then becomes part of the background. That's why compost-only systems often need reapplication every season just to maintain results. The transition layer I'm talking about stays active much longer because decomposition is still happening, just slowly enough to be controlled. This is where fungal networks establish especially mycorrhizal fungi that won't thrive in fully broken down material. Those fungi extend root reach, improve micronutrient uptake, and build soil structure through glomalin production. Without a place for them to live, they never fully establish. What this layer actually looks like in a real garden. In a backyard bed, this layer is about 2 to 3 inches thick. It's made from shredded leaves, aged wood chips, chopped straw, or coarse plant material that's been pre-wetted and lightly mixed with finished compost or native soil. The goal isn't uniformity. The goal is contact points between carbon, microbes, and oxygen. I build it in fall whenever possible. I lay it directly on the soil surface, water it thoroughly, then cover it loosely with mulch. By spring, it's soft, darkened and threaded with fungal strands. Roots move into it immediately instead of racing past it. In raised beds, this layer prevents the common compaction line that forms halfway down the bed. In ground soil, it breaks the hard transition between tilled topsoil and untouched subsoil. In containers, even shallow ones, it stabilizes moisture and reduces nutrient swings. Why most gardeners accidentally destroy this layer every year. Tilling, double digging, and aggressive turning wipe it out. So does constantly mixing fresh inputs into finished compost. When everything is blended together, microbes never get a stable habitat. The soil stays in a permanent reset cycle. I stopped turning beds years ago. Instead, I let this layer build upward slowly. Dead roots stay in place. New material is added on top. Over time, the soil profile becomes deeper, looser, and more biologically active without ever being disturbed. How this changes watering, feeding, and plant health. Once this layer is established, watering becomes predictable. Soil holds moisture without staying soggy. Plants stop showing deficiency symptoms that shouldn't exist based on fertilizer schedules. That's because nutrients are being cycled biologically instead of dumped chemically. I've reduced fertilizer use by more than half in beds with this layer, and in some cases eliminated it entirely. In hydroponic systems, adding a physical analogue, like a bioactive root zone with carbon media, produced similar results. The trade-offs gardeners should understand before trying this. This is not an instant fix. The first season is about establishment, not peak yield. If you expect explosive growth in 3 weeks, you'll be disappointed. What you get instead is consistency. The second season is where results show up clearly. You also can't suffocate this layer. Heavy plastic barriers or thick, compacted mulch defeat the purpose. Air matters. Moisture matters. Balance matters. Why this works across climates and growing styles. I've used this approach in dry climates, humid ones, cold winters and hot summers. The materials change, but the principle doesn't. Build a biologically active buffer zone where roots and microbes meet and let the system regulate itself. Gardens that fail year after year aren't lacking inputs, they're lacking structure. This layer provides it. If you want better growth, stop adding more and start building smarter. If this video helped connect dots you've been struggling with, subscribe to Gentle Herb Living and share it with someone who keeps feeding plants but never fixes the soil. Better food comes from better systems, and better systems start with understanding what actually works beneath the surface.